July 1945. A German submarine U-530 surfaced in Argentina weeks after the entire Reich had already surrendered. The weary crew offered no explanation for their voyage. Their silence was as deep as the ocean they emerged from. Rumors spread quickly across the globe. What drove them across the Atlantic, and what had they truly witnessed below? The submarine's official logs contained grave anomalies, including sonar readings that defied all known naval science. Allied witnesses spoke of sudden surges in the sea of waves without wind, of a strange silence, heavier than a storm. One diary entry written in a frantic, shaking hand read only this: longer than the submarine itself. The submarine's steel hull bore absolutely no scars of battle, but the men's eyes betrayed a terrible other story. Something had pressed upon that vessel from the outside, something completely unseen yet utterly undeniable. The U-boat had endured far more than mere enemy fire. It had brushed against the vast, horrifyingly unexplainable. This is their account, their fragmented story reconstructed from the terrifying fragments that they left behind. A monochrome map of the Atlantic, coordinates traced the submarine's patrol zone, meticulously etched a silent directive. The camera lingers on U-530's rugged hull, a torrent of green-gray waves ceaselessly crashing against the cold, scarred steel plating. A somber narrator's voice describes the Type IC-40 class, a true predator built for incredibly long-range missions. Inside the cramped control room, a frantic symphony of glowing dials, twitching gauges, and men in stark-pressed uniforms. Officers grimly check navigation charts, their faces bathed in the eerie, oppressive glow of red emergency lighting. The hypnotic clack, clack, clack of the Enigma machine keys coded messages being sent into the static-filled air. Intense training drills. The torpedo crews rehearse loading procedures with a grim, practiced, and almost unsettling precision. A hardened petty officer's sharp voice shouts a rhythmic cadence, his tone enforcing an almost fanatical level of iron discipline. A tight shot on rows of heavy leather boots lined up perfectly, a rigid, stark symbol of forced order. The mess hall, a bleak space where simple rations are passed around, and the silence is thick, heavy, and profound. A young sailor whispers a brittle joke to the table. Others crack a brief, rare, and almost painful smile. The Captain Hoffman observes it all in tense silence, his posture rigid, but his expression fiercely protective. Vogel, the weary officer keeping the war diary, writes in an impeccable, neat, and deliberate German script. Becker, the youngest sailor, stares with wide, nervous eyes at the unforgiving, riveted steel of the bulkhead. The omnipresent low hum of the diesel engines fills the dark, claustrophobic corridors with a constant drone. Crew members scrub the deck, a ritualistic and desperate act of cleanliness amidst the clinging grime of oil and salt. Officers gather to review the navigation charts. The name Argentina is discreetly and ominously noted. A simple chalkboard lists order number 47, the mission's ultimate and most secretive final directive. The torpedo room, a chilling array of gleaming silent warheads marked with cryptic coded identification numbers. The watch crew methodically tests the periscope, their eyes trained with painful intensity on the empty, vast horizon. An officer meticulously adjusts his wristwatch, ensuring it is perfectly synchronized with the unforgiving ship's clock. A sudden crackling radio message breaks the silence, referencing the shocking definitive collapse of Berlin. The men exchange solemn glances. They all know Germany is falling, but the inexplicable mission continues. In the cramped bunks, exhausted bodies try to find rest as the narrow hammocks sway with the ocean's gentle rhythm. A sailor clutches a small, worn photograph of his beloved family, his eyes brimming with a distant longing. Vogel in his diary writes two haunting sentences: discipline intact, morale is strained. The twin depth gauge needles twitch violently as the submarine begins its silent, inexorable downward dive. A sudden sharp creak echoes through the stressed steel, a routine sound but always profoundly unsettling. Hoffman stands motionless at the conning tower, his binoculars ceaselessly scanning the gray, endless waves. The men methodically and ritualistically polish spent shell casings, a grim, detached, and silent shore. A quiet, desperate prayer is whispered before lights out in the oppressive darkness of the crew quarters. The palpable atmosphere tightens. Every single man is acutely aware of the vast, unseen threats that lurk. A deep, overwhelming silence dominates this world. The crushing ocean outside relentlessly presses in. The captain notes in his log, all systems functional. The true final mission remains undisclosed. The final shot lingers on Vogel's war diary. The ink is still wet as the final haunting pages slowly turn. The sonar operator adjusts his worn headphones, his brow furrowing at an unsettling, strange, persistent vibration. The sonar's frantic recording needle scribbles erratic, jagged lines across the pale, unreadable sonar graph. Officers exchange deeply uncertain looks. No known nautical vessel anywhere matches this haunting, strange sound. A faint, unnerving metallic echo reverberates like a ghostly knock along the immense dark steel of the submarine's hull. Becker, the young sailor, reports hearing distinct rhythmic knocks from just outside the torpedo bay. Hoffman quickly dismisses it all as mere pressure shifts, but his worried, tired eyes betray a deep concern. The entire crew gathers silently around the fresh sonar printouts, desperately searching for any logical explanation. Vogel notes in his war diary, unidentified acoustic contact. The strange code is Echo Delta. A sailor dreams aloud of gentle wails, and a fit of sharp, nervous laughter breaks the heavy tension. That night, young Becker wakes up screaming from a terrible nightmare of large, unblinking eyes in the deep. A profound exhaustion spreads through the crewmen begin to whisper grimly of the tapping visitor. A sudden violent jolt rocks the entire submarine, throwing heavy mugs from the small mess table. The emergency alarms, sound engineers rush to check the ballast tanks for a mechanical breach or fault. No mechanical fault is found anywhere. All vital systems still register as completely normal. A terrifying, absolute silence follows, heavier and more suffocating than the silence that came before. The watch officer peers through the periscope, his face pale and drained at what he suddenly sees. He reports a colossal living shadow silently sliding just beneath the dark, churning surface. Others crowd eagerly around the periscope, but see nothing at all, only the same endless dark water. Becker swears he glimpsed a glint of large, iridescent scales flashing just for a second in the darkness. The captain issues a set of strict, firm orders. There is to be no speculation in your reports. Enigma messages crackle and fragmented and garbled, their final orders almost completely unclear. The crew immediately suspects some kind of deliberate interference, though no storm is anywhere near. The hydrophone captures a long, unbelievably mournful tone. It is neither a ship nor a whale. Men gather in strained silence, listening to the chilling, impossible recording play over and over again. The entire hull groans, as if something massive and alive deliberately brushes against it in the deep. The oppressive tension thickens. All routine drills are carried out now in a grim, forced silence. Vogel grimly writes in his diary, "The men's nerves are strained well beyond the point of discipline." A single lamp flickers erratically in the control room, though the submarine's power remains steady. Becker now refuses to sleep near the torpedo room, muttering feverishly about the shadows. An officer marks their position on the map. They are hovering directly over an immense, uncharted trench. The sonar operator insists that the bizarre sound source is now moving perfectly with the submarine. The men begin to polish brass fittings obsessively, a desperate, frantic attempt to calm their hands. Hoffman's final log entry. Contact persists. The crew's morale is becoming dangerously unstable. A sudden, profound, and terrifying silence falls. No sound from sonar, no sound from the great sea. The entire crew holds their collective breath, waiting in a terrible dread for what will inevitably follow. The sonar operator reports sudden distortion contacts are multiplying erratically across the pale graph. Crewmen crowd the small station, their faces grim, unable to explain the impossible erratic signals. A deep, low-frequency hum vibrates through the entire hull, rattling loose utensils in the galley. Becker, the young sailor, insists with a rising panic that this sound is alive, not mechanical. Hoffman demands absolute, immediate silence, his command voice sharper and tenser than ever before. The crucial depth gauges flicker and then show false, impossible readings of an unknown, vast depth. The submarine lists briefly and then rights itself just as suddenly with no apparent cause. Vogel notes in his diary, "The instruments are now unreliable. The men are visibly shaken. Engineers confirm no mechanical malfunction. The intricate machinery still runs perfectly." A sailor faints during his watch duty, claiming he saw a fin longer than the entire deck. The medical officer diagnoses pure exhaustion, but frightened whispers of a monster still spread. During the night watch, men freeze in horror as the periscope lens reveals a vast moving shadow. The colossal shadow drifts slowly past the hull, utterly blotting out the pale moonlit waves. Becker, in a moment of pure panic, prays aloud, breaking all established Navy protocol. Hoffman punishes him with a silent, intense glare, but he makes no move to stop the prayer. Officers debate whether to surface or dive deeper. Both options feel equally and terrifyingly perilous. A sudden metallic screech shudders violently along the entire length of the pressure hull. Men cover their ears in terror, utterly convinced that something is deliberately clawing at the steel. The already dim lighting dims, flickers, and then eerily steadies itself once more. The sonar records complete silence, then a violent, agonizing surge of static overwhelms it. Vogel writes in his diary, his script shaky. The ocean itself feels actively hostile. A loud, sickening thud reverberates as if the hull was struck by a colossal, impossible hammer. The crew checks the ballast tanks again and again, no breach is found. The torpedo chief insists he saw the water ripple inside the perfectly sealed torpedo chamber. Becker now refuses to sleep, clutching a heavy wrench like a crude, desperate weapon. The mess hall is utterly silent, every single spoon scraping the dish echoing unnaturally. The captain studies the worn charts, his hands trembling visibly for the very first time. Officers attempt strained morale speeches, but no one, not a single man, is listening. A prayer circle forms secretly in the dark, silent lower deck, a last desperate hope. The hydrophone picks up rhythmic, deliberate pulses. They are far too deliberate to be random. The sailors murmur to each other in low, fearful tones, "It's following us." Hoffman orders a deep dive to test the shadow's terrifying, relentless persistence. Depth 100 meters. The same unearthly sound continues without change. Depth 200 meters. The same impossible sound grows unmistakably louder. The immense hull creaks and groans under the impossible strain. Sailors instinctively brace themselves. At 250 meters, a vast living silhouette passes directly overhead, blotting out sonar completely. A moment of pure panic erupts. Two sailors begin to demand they surface immediately. Hoffman refuses the demands. His weary command voice finally cracks for a moment. The submarine shudders violently, as if nudged by something impossibly immense. A terrible rain of loose bolts and rivets falls from the ceiling, striking the men's helmets. Engineers report a temporary, inexplicable power loss in the aftmost compartments. Emergency lanterns glow, casting eerie red shadows across the crew's terrified, fearful faces. Vogel writes in his war diary, his hands shaking, "We are not alone. The men now know it." An oppressive silence descends, and only the sound of strained, terrified breathing remains. Suddenly, the sonar screen explodes with a violent, piercing, and utterly inhuman shriek. The emergency klaxon's final shriek fades away. The crew braces in an absolute, terrifying silence, a stillness heavier than steel. Hoffman orders all hands to their stations. His voice is steady and firm, but only through a sheer, brutal force of his own will. The hydrophone outputs a single, continuous, piercing tone that violently rattles every single metal locker in the vessel. Engineers report transient, inexplicable voltage drops across the entire main battery bus with no visible electrical fault. At a depth of 260 meters, the immense hull now sings with the crushing pressure and a terrifying, unearthly something else. The periscope well sweats condensation, as if the entirety of the dark, deep ocean is breathing just inside the hull. An unsettling, deliberate tremor runs the entire length of the submarine, a tremor that is measured, not random. Vogel writes in his war diary, his hands trembling violently, "The disturbance exhibits deliberate, malevolent intent." Torpedo crews stand silently by. All safeties remain firmly engaged per the captain's explicit final order. A low, unearthly shadow passes the bow. Sonar now paints a solid wall of moving, living absence. Mess tins begin to slide across the tables as the entire vessel starts to tilt without any input from the helm. The rudder responds late and sluggishly, as if the vast, dark ocean itself is now actively resisting its movement. Becker points to ripples along the torpedo room gauges. The water is intact, but the metal dials are visibly trembling. The hydrophone now catches a repeated patterned knock. The intervals are clearly like a code, but inhuman. Officers begin to debate whether they should signal for help, but Hoffman forbids any kind of electronic reply. A second, even stronger impact reverberates through the aft. There is no breach, but morale audibly fractures. The lighting drops to a deep, ominous red. Emergency strips glow over the crew's pale, terrified faces. From the conning tower, a sound like tearing canvas, but deeper, far more profound, completely surrounds them. The bizarre sonar contact widens until it finally consumes the entire terrifying scope of the display. The submarine lifts subtly, as though held carefully beneath a rising swell, yet with no visible surface waves. A seam along a locker door hums loudly. Loose metal shavings dance in strange, impossible magnetic patterns. Vogel notes the compass deviation is significant. Our instruments now distrust the entire world. On command, the ballast is adjusted, but the trim remains inexplicably and stubbornly stern-heavy. The deck vibrates with a slow, deliberate cadence. The crew's panicked heartbeats try to match and fail. Hoffman grimly readies a decoy pattern, but no one, not a single man, believes that it will matter. The decoy is deployed. Sonar shows the contact. Ignore it completely and utterly without hesitation.
We're taking on water. Shut it down.
Bloom of silence replaces all sound,
It's not
as
working.
if the very ocean has swallowed it whole. In that chilling void, men hear their own strained breaths amplified, as if by the vast sea itself. The silence ends with a deep, crushing bass surge. A pressure pulse thumps chests in bulkheads. A spatter of porcelain from the head explodes outward, the
Now
effect
get
of
to
a
your
powerful
station.
shockwave, not shrapnel. The boat pitches violently, and men slam against the rails, recovering by their instinct and training alone. Through the periscope, the watch officer reports a living ridge of immense darkness crossing the moon path. Hoffman lifts his hand to authorize the torpedoes and then lowers it, his jaw set like cold stone. He orders with chilling, unnerving clarity, "Hold fire. We record. We absolutely do not provoke." The contact aligns parallels, matching the submarine's exact speed and depth with a chilling, predatory precision. The hydrophone now registers a deep, layered resonance, multiple distinct sources moving as one in unison. The frames flex, bolts sing, the deck plates answer with an agonizing, powerful, sympathetic vibration. A final surge lifts the bow and then sets it down gently, carefully, like a powerful, unmistakable warning. Sonar clears completely. The graph returns to its ordinary chaotic state, the sea and not the presence. Hoffman writes the final log entry himself. "We survived the encounter, cause unknown, nature beyond all ordinance. The submarine drifts at its assigned depth, the engines idling in a tense and unnatural strained quiet. Hoffman orders a full damage inspection. No hull breaches are found, no visible scars remain. Engineers reluctantly confirm all of the systems are intact, yet the crucial gauges still flicker irregularly. Vogel notes in his log,
okay.
all of the mechanisms are
safe
physically whole, the men are not. Becker sits completely motionless, his hands clasped so tightly and white around a wrench. The medical officer quietly records cases of persistent involuntary trembling
Radio silence.
and sudden night sweats.
Alter.
In the mess, the simple food is left completely untouched. The ration tins remain sealed and closed. Men speak only in low, hushed whispers,
Protect us.
as if the vast, dark ocean itself might overhear. The hydrophone readings return to normal, but the operators hesitate deeply to ever trust them again. Hoffman revises the ship's log, using only neutral language to mask the unreportable facts. Vogel writes privately in his diary, "The silence that is imposed is far heavier than discipline." The crew resumes their routine drills, but their gestures are stiff and their eyes are elsewhere. Polished brass fittings shine unnaturally bright, having been cleaned obsessively by anxious hands. Becker asks for permission to transfer bunks, muttering of a lingering fear of the torpedo room shadows. The lights flicker briefly. A sailor crosses himself quickly before returning to his duty. Officers review the navigation charts again. The final destination remains Argentina. A sailor murmurs to a friend,
We head for
"If we are
Argentina."
fortunate enough to reach land at all." Morale reports are filed, the phrases meticulously coded to conceal the true underlying panic. The captain addresses the entire crew, his voice firm, "What we saw will not be spoken." Heads nod obediently, but a chilling fear still lingers behind their lowered eyes. A depth charge drill is ordered, a grim ritual, even though no enemy is truly pursuing. Sailors stumble through the motions of the drill, their bodies trained, but their spirits are absent. Vogel writes, "Our rigorous discipline survives, our simple certainty does not." The engine room hums steadily and predictably, a beacon of mechanical order amid human disorder. A sailor replaces his family photo into a breast pocket, his fingers shaking uncontrollably. Becker whispers that the sea itself is actively watching. No one, not a soul, contradicts him. Hoffman drafts a sealed report, marking it with the highest classification, Geheime Reichssache. Argentina's coast is plotted on the Warn chart. The final waypoint is circled and marked in pencil. In their cramped bunks, sailors lie awake for hours, their eyes fixed on the cold steel above. The historian's voice concludes, "The men endured,
The
but they
ocean
never again
keeps
trusted the
its
silence of the
secrets.
deep." The U-530 surfaces silently under a pale moonlight, the vast Atlantic stretching out before it endless. The men squint at the distant horizon, a palpable relief mixed with a strange wariness of the overwhelming calm. Hoffman notes in his log, surface operations resumed. The chilling uncertainty of the situation persists. The hydrophone registers faint, deliberate pulses that seem to be coming from a great distance. Vogel writes in his diary, "The sea keeps its unnerving rhythm. We cannot and we will not forget it." Becker, the youngest sailor, now refuses to approach the periscope well ever again. Officers debate whether the contact was biological, mechanical, or just a collective shared hallucination. The captain dismisses all of their theories with a grim finality: it will not be written. A sailor compulsively scratches strange symbols into the bulkhead patterns echoing the sonar knocks. The medical officer prescribes a mandatory rest. No one in the entire crew can truly sleep. The engines thrum with perfect consistency, but the crew hear phantom echoes from deep beneath the hull. A sailor swears he can still feel the vibrations through the deck, though the gauges show calm seas. Vogel notes in his diary with dread, "The men are now convinced that it follows us still." A sudden supernatural calm spreads across the sea, a mirror flat and utterly unnatural stillness. The submarine cuts across the water's surface without a single wake for several minutes. Men whisper in low, hushed tones of being carefully carried rather than being propelled. When waves return to the sea, relief is muted. The gnawing fear is now far deeper than before. Argentina grows ever closer on the warn charts, yet it all feels impossibly terribly distant. The Enigma machine crackles faintly, delivering no message. A terrifying silence now fills the air. Hoffman locks the entire war diary into a small, hermetically sealed steel case. Vogel's own personal and private notes remain hidden deep within a small dark corner of his bunk. A sailor confesses in a hushed, terrified voice, "I swear that it looked back at me." No one, not a single man, challenges him. Their shared silence serves as agreement. The historian notes in his report, upon their surrender, their entire testimony fractured into silence. At Mar del Plata, Argentina, in July 1945, U-530 appears without any clear logical reason. Allied interrogators desperately press for answers. The crew provides absolutely none. Official reports are released listing the long, strange voyage as completely unremarkable. The sealed war diary disappears into the archives marked with the highest classification. Rumors begin to spread of a vast, impossible sea creature, longer than the submarine and never named. Final shot, the dark Atlantic waves roll endlessly and silently, a dark shadow moving far below.